Brian, we're back in the car. We're headed northbound. We've had a successful couple of days coming from Dallas to California, but now we're headed back to Sacramento to fly out. I thought it'd be like a really good opportunity to have a conversation with you about you, about 4 states, about the Chrome Shop Mafia, and all sorts of other stuff. Even some of the fans, the Big Rig Video fans, had some questions. So I thought it'd be a cool time to maybe talk. We got a couple hours to kill. What, like how many hours?
We're just riding and gliding for the next 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So yeah, no better time than the present.
All right. Well, and this is going to be like super like off the cuff. I mean, just because we got time to kill, we got editing on our side too.
Make us look good.
Yeah. And even from my personal point of view, over the last couple of days, I think this by far is the longest amount of time that you and I have spent around each other, because prior we met in 2012, and probably the longest time that I probably spoke with you via phone or in person, let's call it maybe 15, 20 minutes at most. Mm-hmm. You agree? Oh,
well, we've been friends and colleagues for a long time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just short burst of visiting, and then when we see each other, which is usually at a truck show event, the last thing we have time to do is really just conversate about anything that pops in our minds. So yeah, I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah. So now we've had what are we, just day 3, day 4? I've lost track.
Oh yeah, and then when we land back in Joplin, we got 2 more days of working together, and there's some stuff even next month we're going to team up with for 3 or 4 days. Yeah. So hey, things are looking up.
Yeah. So take us back to the very beginning. You spoke about your dad. So tell us about your dad. Your family life where you grew up, and what your dad did. Mm-hmm. So I guess we'll start with that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. I'm born and raised in Joplin, Missouri. Really didn't live anywhere else other than the 1 year I spent down in Nashville when I was going to diesel school after I graduated high school. But Joplin born and raised. My dad was from there. My mom was from Kansas City, and when they got married, they of course moved to Joplin, where Dad's roots were. He at that time had just got done working for Skelly Oil Company, and he had moved to Joplin and bought a truck stop. So he was in trucking. My uncle was a diesel mechanic. My other uncle ran another truck stop about 30 miles north of Joplin. My granddad run a couple of trucks. He had a service station, and he actually had his own trucks, to haul fuel. I mean, this has got to be back in the late 60s, very early 70s. So, Dad saw an opportunity there with the fuel hauling, and kind of kept his truck stop, but put a bigger focus on the trucking and the delivery of diesel fuel, gasoline, things like that. And hey, anybody that wanted to buy a tanker load of fuel, whether it was a convenience store, a big farm, factory, truck stop, whatever, he would haul your fuel for you. So when I was a kid, big enough to remember anything from that point on, I mean, I always looked forward to any time I could ride shotgun with my dad, which was rare. It was really rare that my dad drove, because he was working that truck stop, which, as we all know, is a 24/7 operation. But my granddad trucked a lot, and my uncle trucked a lot. So any chance I could, especially in the summers and long weekends and stuff, I would go trucking with them. And I knew from 12 years old up that I don't care what anybody tried to talk me into. I did not want to be an astronaut, a fireman, or a doctor. I wanted to work around trucks. Wasn't sure at that time if it was going to be driving, mechanic, and I sure didn't think it would be selling parts for them. Yeah. But anyway, summers I started working on my dad's trucks. We'd bring them in every Saturday.
About how old were you then?
I would say at this time, it's probably that 12 to 13, because I'd go to the truck stop, and every once in a while, if I was behaving, he would let me work a overnight shift with him. But sometimes I'd only get to spend an afternoon or an evening there, but on the really special times, I'd get to do an overnighter.
What'd you do overnight?
I'd actually, back then, his truck stop had full service. You had a self-service island, and you had a full service island. And back then, the full service was actually more popular, because they didn't charge hardly anything, a penny or two a gallon more for full service. And even at 12 and 13 years old, drivers would let me, you know, when you'd get their fuel pumped, they'd let me pull them ahead, you know, and set the brakes so that the next truck could pull up and get fuel. But back then we had the rolling ladders. We were washing all the windshields. We were thumping the tires, letting them know if they had a flat. A lot of times they'd tell you, just pull it around back, go ahead and start fixing that flat, you know?
Yeah. Nice.
So between running the fuel island or with the guys, or hanging out in the shop where they were doing oil changes, wheel seals, brake jobs, stuff like that, I would kind of just, you know, it was a different era back then. I would just wander around the truck stop. They had a full service cafe, you know, I could go in there and get French fries or anything I wanted, you know, and put it on Dad's tab.
Nice.
So there was just a host of things to do there around the truck stop.
And so, just so the viewers can understand, if anyone's been there to what the current day of Four States is, where was the building that you're speaking of?
Well,
still there?
Where Four State Trucks is today, the building, it's fenced in now, and we use it for storing our fiberglass hoods, but that building in the middle of the lot north of us, that was Truckers Inn Truck Stop of Joplin. There's still a little bit of it still standing. We just use it kind of for a catch-all storage. We put a lot of our trade show displays and things like that in there. But you know, after that, went through high school and worked when I could on Dad's trucks, heavy on the weekends. That's when we would do all of our tire changing and oil changes and stuff like that.
So before we shift gears and speak about anything else, going back to where your dad bought that truck stop, or saw an opportunity to buy a truck stop. Yeah, of course, having family in the business of trucking, did he see immediate need, as in there was nothing around, or that particular truck stop was poorly managed? What really brought him to want to purchase a truck stop?
I really never have heard that story. I know the truck stop was pre-existing. He didn't build it. He ended up buying it, and I'm not sure how that came to pass. Back then, this had to be in, like I said, the late 60s. Across the street, where the Pilot Travel Plaza is now, there was Jesse's Truck Stop and Red's Cafe. And Jesse's was probably a little more well-recognized and notorious than Truckers Inn of Joplin, which is what my dad ended up with across the street. So back then there was no Petro, there was no Rapid Roberts, of course, no Peterbilt at Joplin. It was just Truckers Inn and Jesse's Truck Stop and one motel. What was it called? The Roadsite Motel, and that was all that was at Exit 4, period.
Wow.
Yeah.
And around what year was that, do you think?
I'm gonna say he probably bought the truck stop in 66, 67, 68. Somewhere in through there.
So while we're in that particular era of time, you know, what was the impression that you got from some of the guys that would come in, get fuel, you pull their trucks ahead? You know, what were they dressed like? What were their attitudes like around that, you know, not that particular time, but as you were, you know, 12, 13, what do you remember?
Oh, I remember everybody encouraging, you know, they were kind of surprised to see such a young little fella running around, and they were always encouraging, kind of building me up, complimentary, friendly. It was a different era. You know, people didn't have to lock the doors on their cab before they went in to get a cheeseburger. They just left it unlocked. When we'd pull it around to the shop to do certain kinds of work, whether it was a flat repair or you know, a water leak, they didn't ask how much is it, and you know, give me an estimate, and I'm going to call that into my boss. They just trusted that you would treat them fair and take care of them, and things of that nature. One neat twist is, back in that era, like my dad's truck stop, and I'm sure Jesse's had the same, they actually had a bunkhouse. So, and I can remember the room plain as day. I mean, it was probably 15 foot wide, 30 foot long, and literally bunk beds down both sides. And I don't even know what the arrangement was, but you know, it's kind of like a driver's lounge. I think if you needed to take a nap and catch up on some sleep, it was yours for the taking. You know, I don't know how it worked, but I know it was well kept and clean, and it was used at that time. Another neat thing is that Truckers Inn at Joplin, this stuff's coming back to me as I'm talking about it. They had a Western wear store.
Okay.
It was my dad's only venture kind of into the retail world up to that point, but they had a full Western wear store. You could get hats, boots, jeans, the whole the whole tamale there at the truck stop.
So that's how some of those guys, they really kind of created their own kind of dress code, if you want to call it that, because the clothes were there, you know, to purchase. And probably, I don't know if they were recommended or not, but I would love to see, you know, a particular line like that come back where you know exactly, you know, what you're purchasing. There's some guys that I've met that will still dress that way, and it's really nostalgic. And of course, they drive some trucks that are similar or from that time period. And it's just really, really cool to see that.
You know, thinking back to that time, you know, things change, and you know, it's not all bad, but you certainly weren't going to see a trucker in short pants.
Yeah.
You weren't going to see him in flip-flops or Crocs. I mean, they were usually dressed for the job. A lot of these guys slept on the steering wheel. I mean, there was no bed, no sleeper berth for a lot of them. To a certain amount, if you broke down, you were going to do the fundamental things to try to get it running on your own.
Right.
You weren't just going to call for help, because calling for help was a payphone that was 15 miles down the highway. You know, it was all CB radio. If one truck was on the side of the road with his flashers on, another truck would stop, see what's up. If he couldn't help him, he would go on to the next truck stop and send help back. It was just a different era that, you know, was, looking back at it, was very, very cool. The camaraderie, and sort of a brotherhood, respect, mutual respect that truckers had back then, looking out for each other, that, you know, isn't there, or certainly not there as strong today.
Yeah. So I've never, you know, we've never had a conversation long enough for me to understand that or know that about you, you know, growing up that way. So now, fast forwarding to now, I can see why you do the things that you do at GBATS, or for different truck drivers that, you know, come to the 4 states to get some work done. It's because it's probably what you're exposed to, and you know, I don't want to say there's no other way to do it, but it's just that sort of hospitality that you probably saw when you're growing up.
Exactly. Well, even looking beyond my family growing up, but looking, like I said, at my granddads, my uncles, they all were involved and reliant on trucking, you know, to put groceries on the table and pay the electric bill. So, you know, I've really never wanted to do anything else. I love anything trucking, I mean, anything to do with the industry. Like I said, when I knew I wanted to end up in the industry, I really didn't care if I was going to mechanic or drive or what, just as long as I was part of the industry. I knew that I would probably be content with it. So, yes, sir.
Okay. So now we got, I guess, a good foundation for you as a person. So tell me about the rest of the family, you know, siblings, you know, mom, things of that nature. So tell me about that.
Yeah, well, you know, Dad was a hardcore workaholic, and truck stop, and then running two or three trucks of his own. He was up all hours of the day and night on the road. Late for dinner far more times than a plan ever came together. So to be real honest with you, we didn't see a ton of our dad growing up. He was usually gone when we got up, and gone when we went to bed. Sundays was kind of his rest day for the most part. But you know, Mom was into every single activity. I mean, she took us to every baseball, soccer, football, musical instruments, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. I mean, she was truly a multitasker mom on the go.
That's awesome.
There was 3 boys. I'm the oldest. Then my brother Bryce, which most of you know from 4 State. And my youngest brother Brent, which passed away in '93. He was in a car wreck that he didn't make it through. So,
sorry about that.
Yeah, we certainly miss him, and he would undoubtedly be involved in 4 State trucks if he was here today. He actually was when he passed in 91, 92, and 93. I got to work with him every day, which was really, you know, special in the circumstances of what happened. But oh yeah, we would. My dad would usually give my mom $500 or $600 once a summer and say, "Take these boys on a vacation," and off we would go.
Yeah.
And he didn't ask a lot of questions or anything. He just trusted that Mom was fully able to take care of us, and we were a handful. We would antagonize each other to no end, and I don't know how or why she put up with a lot of it, and kept us between the ditches, and made sure we grew up respectful and successful.
That's awesome. I mean, $500-600, you can barely go anywhere nowadays with that. Where were some of the places that you guys would go, if you can remember?
It was pretty much always the same. We were either going to go to Kansas City and go to Worlds of Fun.
Okay.
And we had family up there because Mom was there, so we could stay for free. We didn't incur any hotel.
Okay.
Back then, Branson was big, but it was kind of on the uptick.
Okay.
So a lot of times we'd go to Branson and spend a week there. She would always get the, what do you call the hotels that have the kitchen in it? Like the kitchenette?
Yes.
She would always seek out a kitchenette. We'd have cereal and milk for breakfast. We would pack our sandwiches to take to the park or wherever the water park, the go-karts, wherever we would go, and she would pack a lunch from the kitchenette, and then we would usually get to go out for dinner. But Branson, Lake of the Ozarks, occasionally St. Louis if she wanted to drive the 5 hours up there, but we didn't venture too far. I can remember one California vacation where we took my uncle, his kids, and his family, and my mom. My dad did not go. He stayed at work. But we went out there with Uncle Mike, and that was kind of the big long trek of my childhood, was that particular vacation there.
That's awesome. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, did your mom have any sort of involvement or helping out with within the truck stop, fuel situation, paperwork, or
nope, she didn't work in the business at all. I think Dad gave her the assignment and knew he wouldn't have to worry about it, is kind of like raise these kids.
Yeah, got it.
Raise these kids, I got this, we'll meet on the other side.
There you go.
Dad was pretty good as we got into maybe junior high sports. He would come to one football game and watch. If you had a track meet, he would come to one, and if you had a baseball game, he would come to one of those. But
per season or
per school year, per season. You know, he wasn't going to make 3 games or all games. Now, Mom, of course, would, and I mean, she worked in the concession stand. I mean, she was involved in everything to a degree that people just don't do these days. I mean, it was, looking back, it's like, holy smokes, how did she do all that and put dinner on the table and clean the house and half the time mow the yard? And today we're all spoiled with, I got a housekeeper that comes once a week, and this guy mows the yard on Saturdays.
Right. Robotic vacuum. All that kind of stuff.
It was different back then.
Well, having met your mom and seen her over the years at GBATS and everything, I can look at her completely different, and obviously, we respect everyone, but knowing that, it's like really awesome, because when you guys, she's present at the shows, and I can just see the pride, but now I have that backstory to go along with it. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Now you know the rest of the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you kind of get up to graduating high school. I went to Nashville Auto Diesel College in 1985, 1986. And then when I came back, obviously this started before I left, but in 1979, my dad partnered up with my great uncle, and together they opened an International Harvester dealership. So to this day, our technical name, our registered business name, is 4 State International Trucks. Wow. We just go by 4 State Trucks.
But it sounds fancy.
Oh yeah, it sounds global, doesn't it? So 4 State International Trucks was started in 1979. My great uncle and my dad was kind of the silent partner. My great uncle ran it on a daily basis. It was actually located where Peterbilt of Joplin is today.
Okay.
So
and that's kind of like what, northwest?
Just across I-44. Yep, north of I-44 to this present day is Peterbilt of Joplin, and we built that building in 1982, maybe.
Okay.
We started out in town and then built that building in '82, and so when I graduated from diesel school, I came back and I wanted to go to work in the shop for my uncle. So I came back all full of vim and vigor, as they say, and I was going to show the world how to mechanic. So I started out there, and Uncle kept me on the simple stuff, the wheel seals, brake jobs, leaf springs, water pumps, and then worked my way up into clutches and engine overhauls and stuff like that. And I did that for actually just a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
And as I said, this is my dad's uncle, so it's my great uncle. He's already in his 70s.
Wow.
and he's ready to retire, you know, a couple, 2-3 years after I get out of diesel school. So in his absence, I moved up to the parts counter, kind of to keep an eye on traffic flow and the cash, and ensure that we were given some level of customer service that, you know, Dad would be proud of. So I kind of just stumbled my way into oversight, junior manager, things of that nature, and we did that for a long time. We actually ended up giving International their franchise back because, you know, new trucks really weren't selling that hot in the 80s. International had sold a bunch of trucks in Joplin, factory direct.
Right.
We didn't make a dime to Tri-State Motor Transit. But we were expected to work on them and do all the warranty work, which left kind of a bad taste in our mouth as far as franchise owners. So we just told them, you can have the franchise back, we're done with it. But we kept the building, so we've still got used trucks sitting out front for sale. We still got a mechanic shop, and we still got a fully stocked parts room.
Okay.
So we kind of keep doing that, just working on trucks off the interstate that, you know, they find themselves broke down. We did a lot of work at the Joplin scales back then because trucks would get put out of service. We were just doing whatever rolled in there off the interstate, and a lot of them rolled in there in pretty tough shape, and the guy would ask you, like, hey, what's wrong? You know, this thing's losing water, or I got a bad miss, or they'd come in on a tow truck, and we'd say, well, dude, man, you burn a hole in a piston, the crankcase is full of diesel fuel, she's shot. You know, it's going to be $4,000 or $5,000 we're going to have to overhaul it. So every once in a while they'd say, I ain't going to spend that. What would you give for it?
Sure.
So we'd make them an offer, you know, not really knowing what we were going to do with it, but we'd make the offer cheap enough that, you know, hey, we could sell the tires off of it, or some stuff like that. Well, you do that 8 or 9 times in a year, pretty soon you push them all out in the corner and you're in the salvage yard business.
Yeah, so that's where that come from.
It really did. Once we got them all pooled up out there in the corner, people would come into the store and say, hey, what do you take for the radiator out of that red International? Or, hey, sell me the hood off that red Kenworth. So we started dabbling in salvage and actually kind of got hooked on it. I mean, it was profitable, it was fun, it was a challenge. There was really no viable salvage options in Joplin. And
about what time was that, right around about?
It was shortly after I came back, so I'm going to say this is 88.
Okay.
And we ran a full-service salvage yard right up to 2016.
Okay.
2016, not that long ago, we decided, as much as we didn't want to give up salvage, the best thing for our business was just to focus on the new parts. You know, just new parts and aftermarket parts, and let the salvage go, because it was so much different than everything else we were doing. It took a lot of acres, it took a lot of staff, and trucks. You know, take 2016. Trucks were changing radically, highly electronic, not a lot of interchangeability from one year to the other, and it took a lot of sophisticated test equipment to test fire an engine or things of that nature. It was just getting real techy. So if we were going to get out, this was the time to get out. We had a big 2-day auction and kind of sold everything to the bare walls as it pertains to salvage.
That's cool. So going back to you going to diesel school, that was something that I had learned, you know, over the last couple of days, and even as you further explained it, because you didn't explain it in detail, you know, we were just chit-chatting. So I can really understand how you can really get, how should I say, engrossed into or fully involved in the business of what 4 States is, because of being, you know, turning wrenches, physically turning wrenches on things.
Yeah, I was so fortunate to come back to Joplin, which is a total trucking town. I mean, to this day, I do believe trucking is our #1 industry in Joplin. And my dad had an excellent reputation in Joplin, so if I ever got stumped on a mechanical question, I always had my Uncle Russ, which was a crack mechanic. I mean, he was top shelf, and I could call Uncle Russ and ask him, hey, it's doing this, it's doing that, what do you think I should start? And he would guide me through it. A lot of times, if I got in a super pinch, he would show up and we'd kind of diagnose it and everything together. And then even folks around town, I could call the guy up at the driveline shop, I could call the guy over here at the transmission shop, and they all really befriended me, and we kind of became one big family. Most of those folks have moved on to different things, or have, you know, moved on in other ways now and are missed. But I always had that support system behind me to call on, and I loved learning to diagnose and troubleshoot trucks, and really thinking it through, because I wanted to be right. You know, I didn't want to tell a guy something unless I was pretty confident I was sniffing down the right trail. But trucks are a lot different today. I mean, you plug them in, computer tells you what to do first, and you go on. But back then it was a lot of remembering from an experience you had a month ago so you could apply it to the situation that you're dealing with now.
Awesome. All right, so we're somewhere around the 80s. You know, what was Bryce up to, you know, in going along? Was he doing things with the business, or did he grow up with your dad's business as well? He
went to business school in Springfield, Missouri, got his degree, came back to Joplin. So I'm working in Uncle's dealership, and then when Bryce gets out of school, out of college, he goes to work for my dad, which at this time my dad's running Martin Oil Company, and he's just in fuel and oil sales and delivery, you know, within the Joplin 4-state region. So Bryce goes to work with Dad and helps him, you know, carry part of the load of Martin Oil Company. I'm working with Uncle across the street, and then eventually my little brother, which did not go to any secondary school, he went to work right at 4-State Trucks with me when he got out of high school. So that's how everybody kind of shook down in the workforce post-high school, post-college.
That's cool. So I mean, everybody came back together with some really good, you know, aspects, you know, to really help the business, you know, operate a little smoother, I think.
Right.
That's cool. So now, moving further up into the timeline, the Martin timeline, about when did you see your first custom truck where things, you know, the tide started turning as far as guys, you know, doing things to their trucks and improving upon them? I mean, at one particular time, there's murals everywhere on trucks and things. So tell us about, you know, when you started to notice the trucks become customized.
Well, I know it distinctly when we got in was 1998. But before that, 96, 97, there was even a truck show in Joplin. It didn't last long. And we saw Streaker. Remember that truck? Streaker came to it. And another one, I believe it was just Showtime, was a brown Peterbilt, painted to match reefers. And, you know, they were just on the cutting edge of truly a customized truck. You know, prior to that, I mean, if a guy had straight pipes, a big bumper, and cabin sleeper panels, he was custom. I mean, he was living large. But these guys took it to the next level, which was pale in comparison to what we do these days. But I mean, they had mud flaps hanging off the battery box, mud flaps hanging off the front spread axle, the back spread axle, and off flap weights on everything, and 2 CB antennas leaning way over front. I mean, they were ahead of the curve, so to speak. And it kind of got a fever going, you know, in me. And at that time, woo, close one.
Oh, at least he waved.
Yeah.
Friendly fella.
Yeah.
I almost killed you, but hey.
At that time, I had a friend. I mean, it was a dear friend in the end, but we were just kind of getting acquainted. I had a friend, Russ Service, from Pueblo, Colorado. And we had kind of done some business back and forth, and he could kind of tell I wanted to put together a big truck. So he bought a 98 Peterbilt Canary Yellow glider kit. 63-inch, flat top, had a little wheelbase, not much, like 270. And he put that truck together and got it rolling. Then he brought it to us and said, just have at it, you know, do whatever you want to do. So, man, we put fiberglass fenders, 8-inch pipes, a big drop visor, pretty much all bolt-on. And I think we did some freehand pinstripes put on it, and we took it down to GBATS in Dallas in '98, and that was our first outing with a big truck. And you know, I gave him a swinging deal. He paid us for it on the chrome and the labor. We did it for, you know, cost. And like I said, over the next 10 years, I mean, this guy became like part of the family. Did a lot of stuff to help us out as a business and just as a friend. But Russ Service got us started that year by letting us take that canary yellow truck down there to GBATS. We put a for sale sign in it, which I know is a bit of a no-no these days, but we sold it. And we took that money and actually put it towards another show truck for the upcoming show season that Russ Service partnered with us.
Okay.
We bought a burnt 99 Peterbilt and burnt the whole tail end off of it. And Russ Service put frame rails and a suspension on it and sent it out to Joplin and said, have at it. It worked well the first time, go for it another time.
Nice.
And we did that one more time, then we stepped out on our own and bought our own truck. They were always salvaged, they were always wrecked, and then we would put them back in top shape, customize them, show them throughout the year, and sell them at Dallas.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
How many were in the crew at that time to be able to put this together, you know, those trucks together?
Gosh, we probably had a shop of, it varied, probably 3 to 6 guys at the most.
All right, so that's
at
not
that
too bad.
time, paint work we were having to carry out. You know, a lot of it back then went to the Kenworth dealer or stuff like that. We'd paint frames and things on our own, but we really didn't paint full trucks.
Okay.
Very soon after we got a painter on staff, but back then it was kind of a community affair to put one together.
At what point did you start seeing themed trucks starting to come into the picture where, you know, from front to back? Like, for instance, I can think of Robert Brinker's truck. You know, that's a highly themed truck. And I'm sure there's lots of others that I can't think of that came before Robert's, but, you know, when did you start to notice that?
When the show circuit got more established, and it become a little more well-attended, better participation, not just from truckers, but from the public. That's when the theme trucks landed, from my perspective. I'm going to say 2002, 3. Before that, you saw some nice trucks, but there wasn't really a theme. It was just, you know, chrome them out, do the interior, you know, as big time as you can. Sound systems were just barely becoming part of the presentation back then, but I'm going to say as far as the themes, 02, 03.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
So you guys are starting to, you know, build a truck each year and taking them on the show circuit. Would I mean, from a business point of view, that, you know, tell me, what did that do for you guys business wise?
Well, you know, right up till 98, 99, till we started playing with these showier trucks, we were selling parts, but man, we were selling brake drums and oil filters and leaf springs and water pumps and engine overhaul kits. We weren't really noted for bumpers and visors and fenders and stacks and seats, but because of what we were doing, people were coming in and saying, hey, the 2 seats like you got in your truck, I want to order me 2. Or that big visor, can you get one for a Kenworth?
Awesome.
So because of our location and the high traffic count, we just like found ourselves being pushed into being a chrome shop, and man, it worked. It took off. You know, to this day and age, and even on the early days, the chrome and accessories quickly surpassed the brake drums and leaf springs, and I'm telling you, they were a whole lot more fun to sell.
I'm sure, especially when you get to see the finished product roll from round back and hit the road.
Exactly.
And you know, another sense of pride that the driver, you know, the owner had, you know.
Yep.
So with that being said, fast forwarding into building more trucks and things, when did it become where people were coming to you guys to have them do things with their trucks? And, you know, explain what it was, because I didn't know how it went down. So at what point did things start to really mushroom, you know, on the custom side for you guys?
Well, we built our first truck, that yellow glider kit, in 98, and then we did the street sweeper, a dark blue and red Peterbilt, in 99. And then that next year, you know, okay, so we're starting our 3rd year on the show circuit, and all of these trucks, we would take them to Louisville, then every show in between, you know, Waupun, back then we had Boston, we had Las Vegas, Baltimore. We would kind of show the whole circuit and then end up selling them in the fall, which was typically the August show down in Dallas. So about 2000, people started coming to us and wanting to have not only their parts ordered through us, but have us do the work.
Right.
By then we had a painter and had what we thought was a pretty good eye for what's going to look cool in a finished product. We would sit down with the truck owner and kind of see what he wanted, and then throw him some options to kind of keep him on the roadway, so he didn't get way out here in left field with some of the concepts. and they would take them to the shows. We'd all hang out together and you know, have a big time. So 2000, and then it was just on the uptick year after year from there.
Okay. So at what point did the Chrome Shop Mafia originate?
Well, we had been building trucks, like I said, and up to about 2005, it was just, you know, hey, take your truck to 4 State Trucks and get it built. Well, you get into 04, 05, we had probably built 20, 25 trucks for other people. And they were out there making a name for themselves on the show circuit. And somebody said, man, you guys really need to think of a name for your club or your gang or the trucks you build. So we were all hanging around in the shop one night. We were masking off a truck for a paint job in the paint booth, and there was 2 or 3 of us working late because we were behind schedule as always. And we had a customer there, and we were talking about this dilemma ahead of us. The customer said, Chrome Shop Mafia. And I mean, all 5 of us or 3 or 4 of us looked at each other and said, that's it. Like done, that fast. That we nailed the name. And a few weeks later, I got with a local marketing company because marketing, art, graphics wasn't really our forte. They come up with the machine gun, the Tommy gun logo, and I mean, it's stuck. It's fun. It's easy to recollect. Like if you see it once, you remember it forever. And thus, Chrome Shop Mafia was born.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So then you guys keep doing what you're doing. I'm imagining, you know, creating custom trucks. They go out, hit the show circuit. The wheels are turning really well. So at what point did something come across your desk where someone wanted you to participate in a television show?
Well, it was, I believe it was 2005. I'm the world's worst on dates. I believe it was 2005. Could have been 04. Disclaimer, could have been 04. But we had built the Outlaw truck. It was a gray primered 379 with a 48-inch bunk. And it was, man, it was a game changer for Chrome Shop Mafia and 4 State Trucks. This truck had no shiny parts on it. All the aluminum and chrome was doled out, Scotch-brighted. Truck was flat primer gray. We sanded through a few spots to show some black primer or red primer exposed. It really had like a moonshine running, outlaw backwoods look to it. We put black painted stacks on it, lowered it, which was, you know, kind of a newer type trend back in the early 2000s that we owe the credit to Rick Kearns from West Virginia. He started and mastered the low riding technique. He was the king of doing the cheap trick and going to a truck show and taking first place. But learned a lot from him. Thanks, Rick. This truck, we put bullet holes, like real bullet holes, all down the passenger side.
Who got to shoot it?
I did. Every last one. But the way
what'd you shoot it with?
At that time, like, you know, I have no patience. So when I get a concept, like, I want to do it that night. All I had was one of those cheap Chinese Army rifles, a 7.62, and I had it, and I had some bullets. So I took the hood off of it. I took the sleeper skin. I took the door, a fuel tank, all home, and shot it because, you know, I wanted to get away from work because we were kind of in a truck stop, high traffic area.
You get a phone call, they're shooting over there.
Yeah, so we took it back to work. We cut the fuel tank apart, got inside it, and welded like pockets over all the bullet holes so it would hold fuel. Did the same thing on the sleeper skin, the door skin. We put a pocket on it so that rainwater and ice and snow couldn't get inside. But man, we had a ton of fun with that truck everywhere we went. Everywhere it went, it stole the show. We had a good sound system. It was unique. It drew a crowd because it was strikingly different. Everybody was going big lights, big stainless, big chrome, the murals, 4-color paint jobs, and then here comes this flat gray, low riding, like this thing doesn't fit in.
That's cool.
And we took it out to Reno. There was a Reno truck show back then, and I'd went out there with it, and Rod Pickett brought his bad to the bone 359 and his race trailer. He brought it down to Reno, and we were going to hang out together. I mean, we were kind of there to show, but kind of there just to catch up. We lived so far away that we pretty much only got a chance to visit on the phone. you know, social media wasn't a big thing back then, and we weren't into it anyway. So it was going to be fun to hang out together with my buddy. So we went out there, and we're hanging out at a show like guys do. And the way the story goes, the folks that were working for CMT that had been assigned the Trick My Truck project, they were from California, from LA, and they had been up and down the California coast looking for a crew to fulfill this TV show project concept that they had. And they weren't finding anybody they liked. They were looking at motorcycle builders, they were looking at big rig dealerships, and they just never did think that they found the right combination. So they picked up a magazine, probably a 10-4 magazine, and they saw, show in Reno on this date. Let's drive out there.
Okay.
So they drive to the Petro there in Reno, which is where the show took place. And as the story goes, they walked up to some of the truckers and said, hey, if you were wanting to get a custom truck built, where would you take it? Second or third guy they asked said, you got to go talk to those guys right over there. And it was myself and Rod Pickett hanging out in front of the Outlaw truck, and these dudes from the production company, Trick My Truck, they walked up and they said, hey, we got an angle we want to pitch to you. Will you hear us out? And they said, yeah, we want you to do a TV show. And we're thinking, yeah, sure you do. Yeah. You know, yeah, like this will ever happen.
Yeah. What truck you guys fall off of?
Exactly. So we played it kind of cool looking back, but we said, well, meet us in here in the cafe, and, you know, we'll grab a Coke and we'll hear you out. No, meet us in there in an hour and 15 minutes or something. Well, the guys come in there to meet us. So me and Rod sat down with them. They tell us about their concept, ask us a little bit about our history, and we said, yeah, we're game. So we wrap up the truck show, load everything up. We each go to our back to Missouri and back to Washington. These guys are in Joplin wanting to film pilot footage 48 hours later. Like, I barely beat them home, and they've got tickets and they've flown to Joplin, and they're wanting to shoot some footage of 4 state trucks, of myself, of the guys in the shop.
You didn't even have time to get ready.
It was total impromptu. Like, they just filmed a normal day's work.
Yeah.
Neat story, in doing that, they accidentally run across Scrapyard Rick. Like, he was there doing his thing, cutting iron, tearing down, and they found Rick and just fell in love with him. And so that's how Rick came into his existence on just Trick My Truck.
Just being himself.
Being himself, and hands down, he was the crowd favorite of Trick My Truck. More requests, more photo ops, more requests to holler, let's tear down. For Rick than probably all the rest of us put together. But
that's cool.
They did that. They went back straight from there to Marysville, Washington, filmed the same thing at Rod and Kevin's shop, and then we didn't hear from them for a good long time, 2 or 3 months. So we think, well, you know, didn't work out. Here they come, phone rings. They said, hey, CMT wants to give this a try. We want to do a pilot episode. So we agreed to do it in Joplin because that's where the bulk of the parts were. And, you know, the Chrome Shop Mafia was going to be a part of the story. You know, we did a lot of the work on that pilot truck outside of the filming. So we agreed to do it there. Rod and Kevin came out. We put together the other guys. Rob worked at a local stereo shop and actually did work for us through that shop. He ended up quitting the shop for the television Trick My Truck opportunity. CB, which you'll remember, worked for me. Raging Cajun at that time, he only did, I think, 1 season. He worked with us. Rhino actually was not familiar to Pickett's or us. That was somebody that CMT had been familiar with, and they said, hey, we want you to use this painter. So Rod and I kind of looked at each other and said, I don't know if we're comfortable, you know. We don't know this guy. But it turned out to be, you know, a really good experience as far as the Trick My Truck and Rhino doing the painting. I mean, he laid down some killer paint jobs and did it all effortlessly. So we did the pilot episode, which you may remember was the Kenworth, copper with silver flames, the Inferno. So that was our pilot episode. The first time we had worked with the production company actually filmed it themselves on a lot of like low rate cameras. If you ever look back, which it's hard to find that footage anymore, but that episode looked completely different than the other 7 of season 1. But they take that back and they say, hey, we got to show this to a focus group all over the country, and if it rates well, we'll be back to you. Man, like 6 months goes by. So we've completely forgot about it. We thought, well, they didn't like what we offered. Good try. We gave it our best shot. Life goes on. phone rings out of the blue, said, hey, they loved it. We want to do 7 more episodes. So, you know, we're like blown away, like, hey, it looks like this is really going to happen.
Yeah.
So everybody comes to Joplin. We rent a shop right down the road from us, and we do season 1, 7 more episodes in conjunction with the Inferno pilot episode, and that's how we got our start on Trick My Truck. Just right place, right time, a lot of luck, a lot of coincidence, but
that's cool.
That's how it went down.
And just being yourself.
Yeah,
You know?
just doing what we do.
Yeah, that's cool. You know, sometimes, you know, things like that happen. Sometimes people, they look for those opportunities, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's cool that, you know, you guys didn't go out of your way for anything, and that allowed you to stay kind of authentic to who you were. So now, what were, and this might be a biased question. So, what was your favorite truck that you've built, you know, throughout time? You know, your favorite one?
Well, as far as the Trick My Truck television trucks, season 1, the production company they admittedly didn't know anything about trucks. They took Rod's advice, they took my advice. We built pretty much 8 cool trucks season 1. I mean, hands down, I'd have been proud to take any one of them anywhere, or to run them, you know, 100,000 miles a year. They were all cool. In that season 1, we did the American Classic, which still to this day resides in Missouri, and it does run, but it has kind of a sheltered life. The American Classic was teal green with white stripes, had a Seminole paint job, had a butterfly hood that Jones Performance made for us back then, had the front fenders that turned into running boards through the battery boxes, a 48-inch bunk. I mean, this truck was cool. And as far as the TV trucks, there were some others that were right there, but the American Classic was probably my favorite.
Awesome. Now, you gotta tell us about the mob sled. You know, how the mob sled came to be, you know, what you guys did with it, and then where it ended up. So,
well, here again, you're going to test my, I don't know that these years are correct, but I think we are between season 1 and 2 on Trick My Truck.
okay.
Not exactly sure of that. I think we are. We could have been between season 2 and 3. And Rod and I had a concept for a build-off. Like at initial concept, we were going to build off against each other. Well, then word kind of got out, and it became a part of the Paul K. Young at Louisville that year. ETC was building one, Phil Langevin up in Canada was building one, and maybe a couple of other guys, I can't remember, but it seemed like the first year there was at least 4 or 5 of us. So me and Rod decided to team up.
Nice.
And kind of, this had some surprise factor, but we teamed up on the mob sled. It was all built in Joplin, and we roughed it out, got it running and driving for the most part, and then Rod and Kevin came down. Best I remember, stayed about 2 weeks in Joplin, helping us finish out all the visor, the exhaust, the bumper, the front suspension, a lot of the interior and everything. Kind of really helped us trim it out, and then spent the next week with us down at Louisville. So that's how the mob sled came about. It was a Freightliner, it was like a Freightliner FLD 120 that we actually moved the cab back, put a classic hood on it that Jones took 4 inches out of the side of the hood. We chopped the cabin sleeper, which it was an integral cab, chopped it 4 inches. Of course, had to lay it out to 300-inch wheelbase, shave the frame rail, no bolts in it, had the most intense sound system I've seen probably to this day. It had 4 15-inch subs, and I don't know how much power Rob put in it, but it would hurt your brain, it would hurt your heart.
Nice.
When you're in the cab and start playing with it. You know, had the digital TVs and the doors and everything, which was pretty trendy for that time. But we had so much fun with that truck. We took every rivet out of the cab. So as you know, a Freightliner is like a Peterbilt. There's a rivet like every 4 inches, everywhere you look. All the rivets were gone. And we took it down to the build-off. I'd like to say we took first, but we didn't. ETC showed up with the Beast, which was, you know, a powerful truck. with a big budget.
Yeah.
And you can't dispute, man, that truck was awesome in everything you looked. You weren't going to find much to pick apart.
Sure.
We did the mob sled on probably a budget of 75 grand. And had a lot of fun with it, but we got down there and just had a ball. ETC played with us on the internet. We would pick at each other intentionally leading up to that.
There you go.
And I've always thought a lot of those guys to this day because they played along. They didn't let it get real, but we would pick at each other like two heavyweight boxers. And we had so much fun filming bogus footage of each other and posting it on our websites. And
cool.
it really, that build off back then was really a cool thing.
Man. And that was before I started doing the whole big rig videos thing, or I would have loved to see that. I mean, and guys still build trucks, so you guys should probably start doing some of that. Hey, and I'm sure it happens, and we all wait for the Mid-America Truck Show for the big unveil, because people have been building trucks in secret, and they show up in Louisville at the Mid-America Truck Show, you know, for the Paul K. Young championship, Truck Beauty Championship. So that's awesome to see that. A big testament to everybody at the build-off, all the competitors. So we get down there and we're all set up, and of course the public's voting on their favorite truck. In the middle of the show, I think this is on Friday, mid-evening, the mob sled dumps the bottom radiator hose. We left a clamp loose. Oh no.
I've got 12 gallons of antifreeze on the ground around the truck. And I'm feeling about this tall.
Did you just throw some glitter in it?
Oh my gosh, no, we didn't do the glitter, we didn't do the flowers, we didn't do the hay bales around, we didn't do any of that. But man, you talk about life's most embarrassing moment. Nobody said a word. It never made social media. I never got any jokes pitched at me for it. Actually, most of the guys helped me run over to the stables down there at the fairgrounds. We rounded up a bunch of sawdust, put it under and around the mob sled, fixed the clamp, filled it up with water out of the water hydrant, and finished out the show. But yeah, you talk about embarrassed, and it all worked out. That's cool. Yeah, that's the pretty good tidbit, I'm sure. There are some people make, oh, that's what that was. The cool thing was it was bright green antifreeze, which really complemented our paint colors that year. That's awesome. So what you have to, some people already know. So you guys built the mob sled. What else happened with the mob sled? We showed it that year, went to a lot of shows. There again, it was a Freightliner, and it was chopped, and all the rivets were gone. So it got a lot of good reviews at all the shows, and we brought it back. We just parked it for a year. We weren't sure really what we were going to do with it. It was not practical to drive. I mean, there's no way we could make the truck workable and sell it. It was destined to be a show truck. So I got this wild idea. I had always liked what Wilkins did down in Oklahoma with putting, I believe they had a truck and trailer nose down, like coming out of the earth, and that was always cool. Like, man, them guys sacrificed a truck and trailer for a sign. So I wanted to do the mob sled on a sign, and so I started telling a few people, and the word got out, and everybody said, oh, he'll never do it. I mean, he's too attached to that truck. They got too much money in it. They'll never put it on a sign, which just pushed me harder. Like, this sucker is going on 2 poles if it's the last thing I do. You open the yellow page and start looking for a crane company. Yep. So I believe on Chrome Shop Mafia, maybe on YouTube, you can still see some video of the day the crane came and put it on the poles. So those 2 poles are 16 feet in the ground. I can't remember how many square yards of concrete are in the ground, and we've got a special insurance policy on that sign in case it ever goes over and I wins. But that's where the mob sled resides today. Of course, we took all the running gear out of it to lighten it up. We took most of the sound system out that was worth repurposing. I've still got the engine out of the mob sled, and I intend to use it in another show truck before it's too late. Well, I'm thinking maybe you might have some time to build a truck. You know, I mean, for upcoming Mid-America Truck Show. Or for GBATS. Never know. That's just me. Wishful thinking. So the TV show came around, and like I said, I concluded at some point. We did 4 seasons. So I believe Trick My Truck went maybe 6 seasons. We did the first 4, and we did them all fast. They were not exactly back to back, but there wasn't a big break between seasons. And then some of the requirements they started asking us to do to the trucks. Like I said, season 1, this production company didn't know anything about trucks, so they asked us what would be cool, what do people like, you know, what would you do? And they implemented most of those. As the show gained more popularity, the production company got full of themselves, and they started telling us what we were going to do, which didn't set well with Rod, and it really didn't set well with me, first of all. But on the other side of that, they were asking us to do stuff that not only was it not cool, it was not practical. Like, we were taking all of the cabinets and storage out of a truck sleeper and putting in a toy train track. You know, we were putting aquariums in the sleeper of a truck.
Are you serious?
We're putting snow cone machines, slushy machines inside trucks.
That doesn't really jive with the trucking community, you know, away from television.
No, they're asking us to put doggy wash stations on the side of a truck, and things that were just, man, they were just hokey, they were corny. And, you know, hey, season 4, we were bound by contract, which they let us know that we were bound by contract and we were going to do this. And we had to do some of that stuff. But when we looked at season 5, not only were they doing silly, corny stuff, they had introduced like they were doing like another dually, a van, and an ice cream truck, and some things like that was just not cool. So at that point, we told them, you know, hey, if you'll keep it semis, we might look at a season 5, but if you're not, we're gone. So at that point, myself, Rod, Kevin, CB, we all left the Trick My Truck and kind of went back to our regular businesses, jobs, and lives. And at least we left and were able to hold our head a little higher at the truck shows than if we'd have done some of the silly stuff in season 5 and season 6, which just was not our style at all. You know, we weren't gonna do some of the stuff that they had slated coming up. So that's how we left the show. And the best thing for me, the very best thing about Trick My Truck, the best part about doing it was, if you think about it, between BJ McKay, BJ and the Bear, and Trick My Truck, there was really nothing on mainstream TV that featured big rigs, trucking,
we should probably
truckers,
that direction.
Semis, things like that. So with the success of Trick My Truck, which was CMT's at that time highest rated debut of a series ever. So, I mean, the public was hungry for it. It kind of put big rigs back on mainstream TV. Well, then here comes American Trucker, Ice Road Truckers, cool shows like Wrecked, Highway to Hell. I mean, it got people's curiosity going and got other networks wanting to feature big rigs and truckers on TV. So I like to think that Trick My Truck, which certainly wasn't all due to our efforts, but the total project Trick My Truck put big rigs back out in front of everybody and spurred some of these other cool shows that followed.
That's awesome. Really, really cool. So now, so let's talk about truck shows. Of course, there's truck shows that happen all across the country, you know, during the nice, you know, parts of the year where guys can actually keep their trucks kind of nice. So the Guilty by Association truck show, tell us how that came to be. You know, why did you decide to start having a truck show there at 4 States? Well,
2008 was our first GBATS, and it really wasn't like a well-planned, well-executed truck show.
And let me ask, did you call it the Guilty by Truck?
We probably did not. We probably called it the first annual Customer Appreciation Day.
Okay, all right.
If memory serves me correctly. But that year, we had done a bunch of work for Castrol. We had customized some of their race haulers and some of their trucks and trailers that went to these big sporting events, drag races, and venues. And of course, we'll all remember Castrol sponsored John Force, the Top Fuel funny car driver. So we were doing some work for them, and I kind of said, man, we'd like to do an event at our place. Customer appreciation, you know, we'll grill some hot dogs, we'll invite 20 or 30 trucks, and by the way, do you think you could get John Force to come? Well, we had to do it on a Thursday, because I think John Force was racing in St. Louis or Oklahoma City on the upcoming Friday and Saturday, so it was on a Thursday, on a weekday. We invited 35, 38 trucks, all friends and customers. We all had, you know, top shelf trucks and great guys. And then, you know, we had some food trucks and put some stuff on sale in the store,
Right.
drug a few t-shirts out front, and had a big time. John Force rolled in. You won't believe this. John Force rolled in with 13 tractor trailers.
Wow.
Like, we were expecting a couple of haulers, and maybe he'd push his funny car out for a photo op. Ashley Force was there. I can't remember the guy's name that also drove another car for him. All of his engine trailers, his machine shop trailers,
Right.
his spare body trailers,
Wow.
his t-shirt trailer. I mean, he rolled in there with some authority and hung out with us and was very interactive with the crowd. Of course, any of you that have seen him on TV, he's not bashful and he's not afraid to say what's on his mind. But thanks to Castrol, John Force, and the I think we had 38 trucks that year. That was the makings of GBATS. I got hooked on it.
That's cool.
I mean, I'm kind of an event coordinator at heart. It's a thrill.
Yeah.
It's neat to be in the thick of it and say, man, all these people are here because of an invite and a thought process you put together.
Yep.
But after that, we did it the same time frame next year, moved it to a Friday, Saturday, and GBATS was born. The Guilty by Association Truck Show. If you're at this truck show and you're hanging out with the Chrome Shop Mafia, you've got to be guilty by association.
Right on. That's awesome. The show seemed to build year after year. Did you feel that you needed to outdo the year before? Because by the time I came around into the truck show world, which was 2012, year after year, your show got better and better. So what were some of the thoughts in creating that? And you let the cat out of the bag by calling yourself an event planner. So what were some of your thoughts in planning the shows year after year?
It was totally a self-challenge. Like, I wanted every GBATS to be bigger, badder, more fun, more events, not just for the trucker, but the whole family. You know, up until then, there's a lot of great shows out there, and they're fun, but most of them, there wasn't anything for the kids or granddad or the wife to do that they would really be interested in. So we tried to incorporate some more, you know, events, activities, displays, and it seemed to be a winning combination. But every year I wanted to up the ante on the band or the truck pull or the stunt, or, you know, what we did as far as our store appearance or our sales or a bigger selection of apparel. But it was just kind of a challenge to do every GBATS better than the prior one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And when I attended the shows, I saw that there were things to do for everyone, you know, from a video producer standpoint and trying to retell the day's event or the event itself. There's lots to film to tell a full story. It wasn't just one particular item, which would be parked trucks and then people milling around the trucks. I was able to really tell a really good story, and it made it fun, you know, and you know, creating that DVD series that we had started with, and so when people would ask me, then they would honestly want to know, hey, Chris, you've been to a couple of shows. You know, what show would you recommend going to? I can only go to one show this year. And GBATS was a show, and I was just being honest with them, because there's going to be so many things that you'll be able to enjoy if you're going to be there for the whole time. You can't go wrong with that. So, you know, good job with that.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, you know, telling a quick story on, you know, how you and I met. Here again, I won't get the year right, but we actually were working with a marketing company at that time that was out of Florida, and we wanted to capture more footage as we went to these truck shows, because, you know, we were okay at getting snapshots, but, you know, it's the video story, like you said. That's what people are intrigued and will sit on the edge of their seat and watch from start to finish, was those videos. And I believe one of the guys at that marketing company said, well, hey, I got a friend down in Florida. He's done some stuff like that. Why don't you call him? So much like the meeting at Reno, where we bumped into the Trick My Truck folks, you and I met up at a conversation we had with a guy that had with a guy, and here we are today. Yeah,
that was a friend of mine, personal friend of mine, Chris Weinstein.
That's it.
And he had, in one of the previous videos, I had him ride along. He was riding shotgun, and so he got to see full circle what that that introduction, what it led to, and everything else. So it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon here. You know, we're talking about people we know that actually have connected us.
And let me reverse the roles here. I'm going to interview you just a little bit.
Okay.
You know, big rig videos, totally your concept. We can't take any credit for that. I'm just so proud to have you as a friend to pioneer. I mean, the whole rolling footage had not been done before. And I mean, people flock to it, you know, to see, you know, the interview, you're talking one-on-one with the driver and everything be in motion, a lot of black smoke, which we can't get enough of, and then the wheels turning, the driving from different angles. I mean, that was a winning combination that you pioneered and perfected, and to this day, people are on the edge of their seat just wanting to see who's going to be next, what's going to be up on the next Rolling CB interview. So kudos to you for coming up with something fresh and unique and on your own that you have brought and shared with literally millions of people.
Thanks. It became, you know, frustrating at a point because some of those shows that you talked about, you know, they're truck-centric, and we got to see what was going on, but the shots of the trucks moving, driving, are just like that.
Everybody loves
it. You know, it was like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, and you're like, oh, you know, I would have wanted to see more of that. And, you know, me growing up, you know, with my dad or family driving, going somewhere, and I'm sitting in the back of the car and I'm looking out the window, you know, I would just watch, you know, the trucks go by or us go by the trucks and things. And it just came to, like, you know, later in life when I started to do things, you know, that involve trucks, I'm like, it'd be great just to look at the truck drive on the road, and that's the primary focus. And then, you know, some ideas came around where when I was going up to the St. Ignace show, the Richard Crane Memorial Truck Show, there was a convoy that was going from one town up to St. Ignace, and the guys met together in that town. It was, I think, about 2 hours south. And I thought to myself, man, it'd be great to film that convoy, but the only way I knew how at the time was to be on the side of the road and film it drive by, and that's not really any fun. And then to capture more footage, I got to go racing ahead, set up again, film it. No, that's not going to work. I need to travel along with them, and it came together like, okay, well, how can I do this? I only got a couple of days to put this together before getting on the airplane to go up there. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to be driven. So I need to find somebody with a truck, you know, a pickup truck. All right, well, I need to be able to, you know, kind of film the right way. There was no gimbals or video stabilization at the time. So I'm like, okay, I'll grab a beanbag chair from Walmart. That's my stabilization. I'll hold it, like, you know, camera as steady as possible. But great, what am I going to do for 2 hours? What if I could talk to them? Yeah, but how is that going to work? And so I'm thinking, well, how can I talk to these guys? All right, well, over CB radio, of course, but how am I going to talk with them without a bunch of wind noise? So I'm thinking about, okay, well, you watch some of the racing going on, drag racing, and the pit crew are talking with the crew chief, you know, via, you know, headsets. And I'm like, okay, well, let me just see if I can find something like that. Sure enough, the wind canceling mics on those things might work. So I bought one of those, and so now I have that in my hand. How am I going to interface this with a video camera and a CB radio at the same time, and be in the back of a vehicle? So I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, well, I can, you know, going back to high school, I took electronics, and I did a lot with electronic soldering and whatnot, you know, building wires. So made a couple connections and did some things that you wouldn't typically do with those pieces of electronics. It seemed like it worked, but I hadn't tested it, had no way of testing it other than driving around and getting on the radio, and I'm that guy, Breaker 19 for a radio check. And, you know, somebody came back, and I'm like, okay, I think it works, but I really didn't know until I got to Michigan, got in the back of Wade Lalone's pickup truck. That's Ryan Lalone, you know, from the Diesel Freak, got in the back of their truck, and we took off heading north. And I put all that stuff together, little handheld mic or little handheld CD radio, you know, patched through with a little antenna, magnetic antenna, going into a crew chief headset, sitting in the back of a pickup truck on a beanbag chair. Definitely not recommended. You know, and it was fine, of course. You know, I'm sure a lot of us grew up riding in the back of pickup trucks.
Hey, everything's got to start somewhere.
Yeah. And so when I keyed up on that thing, and I said, so guys, how am I coming in? And Dennis Mitchell, he responded back, and he said, sounds like you're sitting in your living room. And at that time, we're doing about 55 miles an hour. And at that moment, I'm like, this might be something
Yeah.
here. And so we went through and we just kind of chatted here and there and along the way. And by the time we got to St. Ignace and parked, everyone was just totally pumped and just really awesome. We just did something really cool. You know, we kind of didn't know what we did, but it seemed, you know, pretty cool at the time. And then from there, just kind of refined the process. You know, electronics and different things became available to make the process easier. And the rolling CB interviews were born and refined, and now just telling people's story.
Right on. Another side benefit that I've often thought about is if you would stick a camera in that driver's face standing in front of his truck, a lot of them are going to freeze up.
Yes.
But you get them driving, shifting through the gears on the CB, totally relaxed. I mean,
Yes.
it's a whole different side of them than you would see if somebody just stuck them up there in front of a tripod and said, okay, tell us about your truck. So hats off to the whole concept. Not only are the driving CB, the rolling CB interviews great, I really like what you did with Bob Spooner, like the history. Some of the storytelling side of what you filmed is also top shelf and right up there on my book as some of the best big rig videos you got.
Thanks, and thank you. I felt with that, you know, we need to pay a little homage, not a little, but a lot of homage to the guys that came before us. And you know, I didn't truck as long as a lot of the other guys did, but I understand, you know, everything that goes on. And you know, just like you said about your dad, he was gone, working, you know, the majority of the time, but no one probably got to see what he was doing. He was providing and doing awesome things for the family, but no one got to see that. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great to pay some tribute, you know, homage, you know, respect to these guys while they're still alive, and allow other people to know about them, and then they can understand who these people are and engage with them and interact with them when they see them out on the road.
Right.
And so when I initially met, you know, Bob Spooner there at Four State, that was just completely, you know, by accident. You know, I thought that, man, this is a great opportunity. and you know, sometimes you run into guys that they will embellish their stories, and we know sometimes they're embellishing. That's okay. You know, everybody likes good, you know, storytelling. But there's nothing that Bob was embellishing about. It
like
was
this
just,
really happened.
Yeah, it was just a matter of fact.
Factual, yeah.
And I'm like, man, you know, and I called him up at, you know, maybe a year or two later, and told him I'd like to sit down with him and actually talk with him. And I was just kind of, you know, hoping that would come to fruition, and it did there when we were in, I can't remember the time, but it was one of the ATHS shows. And we had a good time just having a conversation, and I could have, you know, the conversation could have been a lot longer, but just for viewing's sake, I had to condense it, but it was a good time.
Well, you know, if you get an opportunity to do another interview like that with somebody that trucked back in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, back when trucking was radically different, don't miss an opportunity to set them down and film them. I know I've had several customers over the years that I've thought to myself, man, I'd like to just spend a weekend with that guy, just listening and kind of provoking stories out of him. And I never did make time to do that. And you know, at some point it could be too late. So I love those old stories like you did with Bob.
Well, I hope to do that. And you know, sometimes I think that I want that to be my primary focus. To chase down, you know, some of these guys, and then still attend the truck shows as well. But we'll see how things unfold that way. So I had another. I think I had another question. We talked about GBATS. Well, fast forward to now. You know, we're almost back to the airport. I think we got like maybe another 35 minutes or something like that. I think. Oh, and I also got to ask you some questions from the viewers.
Sure.
But while I get those questions ready, how did it go? You know, from your point of view, how did traveling out to Dallas and traveling out to California, you know, how that go, and who do we go see?
Well, you know, first of all, I was looking forward to hanging out with you for 3 to 4 days. We did 2 show truck walkarounds. The first one with Truett Nova Sad, which it's fun doing all these truck walkarounds, but when you know the guy, I mean, Truett's a good bud, a good customer. He's VIP stuff there at 4 State Trucks. He hasn't missed a GBATS, and just an all-around world-class guy. You're natural. You can fun around with each other. It was a blast seeing him and Crystal in Texas. They drove 4 hours to meet us sort of halfway, so to speak, and make this possible. Truett's as busy as the next guy. He probably had other things he could have done that day, but I mean, they had the truck dialed in for us. Did a great interview, walk around, had some fun with us. It was really good to see them. I think that footage came out awesome. Excited to see that broadcast and share it with everybody. And then, you know, second walk around was at Magini Hay Company out there in Riverdale. Haven't seen Mike since 08, 07 at the Vegas Truck Show. Man, it might have even been earlier than that. He was throwing out dates like that. I don't know that they're totally accurate, but there again, that's not my specialty. Haven't seen him in a long time. They're sort of legendary out here on the West Coast as being cool guys with cool trucks that work hard, play hard, run hard. So it was really neat to see him get the 3-generation side of it. You know, Mike's dad Melvin, and then Mike, and then now Mitchell's getting in the business, got his own truck, hauling heavy equipment, hauling hay, doing whatever needs done on a daily basis. Hospitality extraordinaire. I mean, the whole family kind of stopped what they were doing to make us feel at home and make the photo shoot possible. So that was a killer time. I mean, I had a blast. Although this is work for you and I, it's really like being on vacation. I mean, you know, we should be paying somebody else to let us do this.
Yeah, right.
You know, we should be paying for the ride. But we did that, and then spending the day at Valley Chrome. There's no telling how many tens of thousands of Valley Chrome bumpers that we've been able to sell over the years. This was my first time there, and to have Ray and Kent and the guys walk us through step by step, it's pretty cool how to see it goes from a flat sheet of steel to a shiny 20-inch American Eagle bumper you're going to hang on the front of your 389.
Yeah, that was impressive.
And they do all that kind of in tight quarters. I mean, you know, you might have expected to see a sprawling, you know, 4-acre facility with, you know, robots and painted floors and stringent guidelines to get into this building or that. But man, they're just doing it probably not a lot different than they did it 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And great folks, a loyal and valued supplier to 4 State Trucks. That was a cool stop. I mean, we haven't had anything that hasn't went beyond expectations this trip.
That's cool. Yeah, it was a good time for sure. I really enjoyed, you know, seeing the guys, you know, seeing Truett, seeing the Maginis again. I like learning, you know, how things are made and the process. There's a lot of technical process, obviously technical process that went into, you know, what Valley Chrome does. So that was really cool. So there's a couple of questions. I'm gonna read them off. Luke Abbott wants to know, does the Bossman miss the Trick My Truck show as much as we do?
Well, let me think about this.
You missed season 1.
I missed the show, and I think the show was a winning recipe. The whole concept of a guy's down on his luck, he deserves and needs a break, and somebody gives it to him, fixes up his truck, and he rides off into the sunset with a big smile on his face. That will never get wore out. That could be a success today, just like it was a success back then on those early seasons of Trick My Truck. So it was a fun part of our life. Whoever expects to see yourself on a television screen, none of us. So to actually have that happen and kind of see how TV shows are made and what goes into it, there's a whole gamut of stuff that when you're watching reality TV, you don't know what all it took behind the scenes to make that appear the way it does. So there again, I'm like you, Chris. I like to learn the learning side of it, to see people's love of the show. You know, we got lots of compliments from people 7 years old and 70 years old that weren't necessarily truckers. Oh, we love the Trick My Truck show. It's so neat of you to do that for us and everything. It was a fun part of my life. You know, am I anxious to do it again? Probably not. We'll pass the baton to the next guy, the next crew that's going to get in front of a camera and do something cool with big rigs. So while we're blessed and fortunate to have been part of it, because hey, they could have picked anybody, you know, we just were the lucky ones at that time that were in the right place, right time. We're not chomping at the bit to launch a new TV series.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So I'm going to be honest with this next one, that earlier I felt that I just want to give you a heads up before we started this whole filming. I read this, you know, as it was, you know, typed up, and it says, ask Mr. Bryan Martin if he remembers the red-headed kid that came with his dad from Ohio to get a big whole kit and a set of twin sticks put in a KW flat top. He also signed a die-cast truck for me about 10 years ago, and I wasn't even thinking. I didn't even say the name, and then you just went into it. The wheel started turning, and what happened?
You were reading that question, yeah, a couple hours ago, and I'm thinking, I remember it. Williamson, Wilkins, you know, and I can picture the guy. And you said, yeah, his name is Williams, wasn't it?
Yeah, Brian Williams. At that point, I'm like, I didn't even give you the name, and so that's pretty cool. You know, the mental Rolodex is working there.
I remember his dad distinctly bringing his Kenworth down from Ohio to get a Unibuilt ring put in the back of the bunk, front of the sleeper, back of the cab, front of the sleeper, like the Peterbilts. And his dad, Dave, had stripped everything out, had all the upholstery out, and was making it easy on us. Plus, he was saving a few bucks because we didn't have to take everything out. And dropped it off there. Super cool. Said there's no hurry. Get it done when you're done. Call me. I'll come back. And everything went great. I think Dave was happy. I think we we hit our budget. It came out great. Went on throughout the next few years. I bought 2 trailers from Dave. We've done other jobs. We've shipped him parts. And yeah, undoubtedly his son's probably grown and got, you know, practically kids of his own now. That has been a while back.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, so I was impressed that you remember that, you know, because you meet a lot of people, you know, a couple of people, you know, a year.
A couple.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. One other person, Dirt's demise. He wanted to know if you guys would ever do something on polishing, and I wasn't sure if he was asking me to do an episode on polishing or an episode with you guys doing something on polishing. What's your thought on polishing?
You know, we've done a lot of magazine articles, a lot of radio shows, and a lot of call-in type shows over the years. There is no question more frequent and more popular than metal polishing questions. I think all of us are just intrigued. How do I get a mirror finish out of aluminum or stainless or whatever the case may be? So I think you could say, yeah, it's probably in the cards in our future. Maybe we can do something together with one of the polishers or polishing companies to give people, you know, a quick, fun step-by-step of, you know, how to polish your tanks or how to polish your aluminum wheels, because that's what we're going to work on most of the time.
All right. So
yeah. Let's put it on the things to do list.
Right on. So I'll just read off some names that basically wanted to wish us safe travels and whatnot, and they couldn't wait, you know, for us to, you know, wait to see what we're up to. Beverly Moselle, Jamie Williams, Jesse Tompkins, Sam Redmond. Let's see, Good Shot Tofa. I'm gonna butcher that. You know, some people they have names on the old Facebook. James Carley, Kevin Clapp. Michelle Swartz Abney, Everett Lopez, Dario Pinella, Tracy Smith Brandenburg, and let's see, oh, I forget about this. And there's a gentleman, Chris Mike Foret. I know him personally. He lives out in the Louisiana area. He says, hey Chris, I hope all is well. Can you ask Brian if they can get some of the Mac accessories those guys down in Puerto Rico have? I ordered a few things from there, but the shipping was a killer. So if he's ordering things from Puerto Rico, yeah, I'd imagine that probably cost a little bit.
No doubt. You know, when it comes to off-the-shelf accessories, none of us can argue it. It's largely a Peterbilt Kenworth Freightliner world. When it comes to the guys with the Macs, the Internationals, the Western Stars, there's just not a great selection like there is for the Peterbilt Kenworth stuff. So I'll reach out to you and we'll send you everything we got from Max. There are a few providers that have let's just say more Mac accessories than others. So we'll be glad to point you in the right direction on all that stuff, which we probably have or can order from you. So we'll be in contact with you, and we'll try to help you get those Macs stainless and trimmed out with chrome and looking the way you want them to look.
Awesome. Well, I can't believe I didn't know how long or how much conversation we get into. We drove from Los Baños to I think we're just outside of Sacramento. But that was a really good conversation. I think we hit a lot of topics.
Oh man, I enjoyed it. And you talk about time flying. It seems like we left Los Baños 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. The counter on the camera says an hour and 28 minutes. So
wow,
that's a good deal.
No, that's a good time.
Yeah. So where are we heading from here? We're gonna get on the airplane, and what's next?
We're gonna be in Joplin tonight, and then Monday, Tuesday, we're gonna do some filming right there at 4 State Trucks, home of the Chrome Shop Mafia. And then we've got some travels coming up, going further east. We won't get any cats out of the bag, but we're going to go east, and we've got several more show truck walkarounds to knock out for this big event that's going to broadcast on the 25th.
Right. What happens if this becomes popular, where people want you and I to team up and do these kind of videos more often? Because you know people around the country. I mean, you can get around. I know a couple of people around the country who what's going to happen if they're like, you guys, you go on the road with this deal.
I guess we'll have to quit our day jobs and do this. I know both of us have like a personal quest. Yeah. On September 25th, I want to give people 4 hours of good entertainment that they won't want to switch channels from. So who knows, this may stick, and this may not be the only time we do this.
Yeah, I will have to say though, we're gonna have to switch cars. You know, this rental car, what is this, a Chevy something or other?
We won't even say what it is. Yeah, it's not real masculine, not a real manly car.
There's a certain car I would want to recommend that would probably do a good job. All right, well, it was a good time, and I guess we'll end the video here.
All right, y'all be good.